If you get nervous when you see fractions and math word problems, keep watching because we're going to work on some together in this week's Word Problem Wednesday. I'm Latrell, your host for Word Problem Wednesday. Welcome to week 2. Today we're going to be helping Alicia with her popsicle business. I received a request from one of my Instagram followers asking me to do a word problem on 4th grade fraction multi-step question. I decided to use popsicles so that we can just get in the mindset of summer. It's almost summer 2019, and popsicles are so yummy when you make them yourself. And it's also good to for young people to have their own business so they can work on money management, and it's just a lot of fun. So let's get into it. So just to remind you, we're going to be using the 3-step word problem solving process. If you haven't seen my video talking about the 3 steps, I will link or put a card in the video so you can click there, or link it in the description of this video. These are the 3 steps. Step 1 is RRTR, which will help you with your reading comprehension. Step 2 is going on a scavenger hunt for 4 things. And step 3 is to solve with strategy and purpose. And I'm going to walk you through each step so that we can make sure we're clearly understanding what we need to do, what's being asked of us, and completely answering the question. All right, so RRTR, reading comprehension, we're going to be reading, reread, thinking, and rewriting. So here's the question for Alicia's popsicle business. Alicia is selling popsicles for 8 Saturdays this summer. If each Saturday her family eats 1/5 of the 25 popsicles made, and she sells 3/5 of the 25 popsicles made, how many popsicles are not sold or eaten all summer? So let's read it again just to get a little bit more details out of this and comprehend it a little more. Alicia is selling popsicles for 8 Saturdays this summer. If each Saturday her family eats 1/5 of the 25 popsicles made, and she sells 3/5 of the 25 popsicles made, how many popsicles were not sold or eaten all summer? Okay. So we're going to rewrite, all right? There are 4 steps to rewriting. First, we're going to replace numbers with blank spaces. Then we're going to rewrite in our own words. We're going to draw a picture or diagram, and then we're going to replace the numbers back. All right, so the first thing was to blank out the numbers. And if you see, there are pound signs or hashtag signs where there were numbers. So we want to do this so that we don't think about the numbers. We're just thinking about the situation. What is going on? All right. You can also write in your own words. So it's hard for me to write in my own words because I already wrote this problem in my own words, but you can write the question in your own words so that you can understand it yourself in the way that you would explain it, the situation. So there's space for you to write in your own words. If you need to pause this video and write in your own words, you can go ahead and do that now. All right. Next, we want to draw a picture or a diagram. So I have a little picture that I'm going to share with you all. Okay, so let's make like a small makeshift calendar. Saturday 1, Saturday 2. So remember, she's selling popsicles on Saturdays, right? And we're just going to do 2 Saturdays because we're not thinking about how many Saturdays. We just know that she's selling popsicles on Saturdays, right? Okay, so let's just draw some popsicles. We're not going to think about how many to draw. I'm just going to draw an amount that I feel will work for our drawing. Okay, so I have some popsicles, and if we look at the question on the right, it says if each Saturday her family eats some number of the total popsicles she made, eats. So let's draw for Saturday too. I'll draw the same amount. I drew 6 on the first one. I'll draw 6 on the second one too. Sorry about the birds. They are going wild out there. So her family ate some of the popsicles. We don't know how many they ate. Let's just circle 2. Each Saturday, her family ate 2. And then she sells some number of the total amount of popsicles. So let's circle these down here. She sold this amount. And there were some left over because the question says how many popsicles were not sold or eaten all summer. So we're going to assume that there may have been some left over each Saturday. Okay. So these are 2 Saturdays, but there may have been more Saturdays. I don't know because the numbers aren't there. So we're just going to put ... and leave our drawing, our diagram like this. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to replace the numbers back in. Let's read it again with the numbers replaced, okay? So Alicia is selling popsicles for 8 Saturdays this summer. If each Saturday her family eats 1/5 of the 25 popsicles made, and she sells 3/5 of the 25 popsicles made, how many popsicles were not sold or eaten all summer? So 25 popsicles made each Saturday, 1/5 was eaten by her family, 3/5 were sold. Remember our diagram, okay? How many were left over all summer? How many popsicles did she not sell or eat over the whole 8 Saturdays? So now our step 2 is to go on a scavenger hunt, and we're going to be looking for 4 things. 1, we're going to be looking for numbers. 2, unknowns or variables. 3, hidden operations. 4, separate steps. Okay, so for our number 1 hunt, we're going to be looking for numbers, all right? And we're going to highlight them as we did in blue. 8 Saturdays, family eats 1/5 of the 25 popsicles, and she sells 3/5 of the 25 popsicles. So those are our numbers that we know. Now we're going to be looking for unknowns or variables. Variables are letters that represent a number. We don't have any variables right now that we can see, but we do have an unknown, a section where an unknown is being presented to us. And that is going to be in the question. It says, how many popsicles were not sold or eaten all summer? How many? That's the unknown. How many were not sold or eaten? So there's 2 categories, not sold and not eaten. Both of those would be characteristics of these popsicles, not sold and not eaten all summer. Okay, operations. So I highlighted of, the 2 words of, and the phrase not eaten or sold in all summer, okay? So why of? Of is a math operation. Let's look and see what operation this could be in our pre-algebraic translation guide. So here's our pre-algebraic translation guide, and we're going to be looking in the verbal word/phrase column. We have operations all the way to the left, which are going to be the categories that break down the verbal words and phrases. We have example, and then we have algebraic translation over here. So let's scroll down and see if we can find the word of. And I found it right here. Of, we can see, is a multiplication word. So if we look at of and then go over, we are using the percent example, but of is can also be used as multiplying fractions to numbers. We also have the word not in our problem that's highlighted as an operation, not sold or eaten. So that means that not is a negative word. So it means we're going to be doing some subtraction, right? That means it's not going to be a part of those categories. And then I highlighted all summer in green because that is going to encompass more than one Saturday, right? She sold for 8 Saturdays, not just one Saturday. So all summer would be how many total were left over all summer. And if we look at separate steps, this is going to help us to see the different steps that we need to take in order to get to the answer. Because sometimes we start solving the problem, we don't realize, oh, I need to do this, 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 and this, not just this one thing in order to get to the answer. So our first step is 1/5 of the 25 popsicles. That's going to be one step. Another step is 3/5 of the 25 popsicles. And remember, we're using multiplication. 3/5 of 25 means 3/5 times 25. And then the last step, or another step that we can see from this word problem is how many popsicles were not sold or eaten all summer. So that's actually 2 steps. Not sold or eaten, and then all summer. 2 steps in one. So 4 steps. All right. So are you ready to solve? If you are ready, please type ready in the comments and we will get started. All right, so solving with strategy and purpose does include a few things that we want to keep in mind. So we want to be sure to pick a strategy. We want to double check our question, make sure we answered it properly. We're going to label our values and numbers, and we're going to circle or box our answers. So first, we're going to pick a strategy. And in our separate steps section, we pointed out some things that we want to make sure we do, okay? First, I want to tell you that I have found 2 strategies that we can use to get to the same answer. So let's start with the first one. We're going to calculate 1/5 of 25 popsicles. Then we're going to calculate 3/5 of 25 popsicles. Next, we're going to subtract those 2 numbers from 25. So we found 2 numbers, we're going to subtract them from 25. And then we're going to multiply the leftovers from 1 Saturday by 8 total Saturdays. Remember we talked about that? All right, let's get started. Okay, so our first step was to calculate 1/5 of 25. That's this step right here. 1/5 of 25 popsicles, and we're doing multiplication, so 1/5 times 25. Now we have a fraction multiplied to a whole number, but it's best to multiply a fraction to a fraction. But how do we turn 25 into a fraction? We can put it over 1. So 25 is the same as 25 over 1, because if you do 25 divided by 1, what do you get? 25. So we didn't change anything about the value of 25, we just changed what it looked like, all right? Now the rules for multiplying fractions is we multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So let's write a new fraction multiplying the top or the numerators 1 times 25, and then multiplying the denominators 5 times 1. 1 times 25, that's 25, and then 5 times 1 is just 5. Now we can simplify this fraction. 25 divided by 5 is just 5, okay? So we got a answer or a number for the 1/5 of 25 popsicles. Now let's work on the second part. We're going to work on finding 3/5 of the 25 popsicles because that is how many were sold. So first we found how many were eaten. Now we want to find out how many were sold. 3/5 of 25 were sold, and we know that that's actually going to turn into multiplication. And this 25 we want to make into a fraction, so we put that over 1, same as we did in the last step. And we can multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So that'd be 3 in the numerator, 3 times 25, and then 5 times 1. Okay, let's start with the numerator. 3 times 25 is 75, and 5 times 1 is 5. Let's simplify this fraction by first dividing out, and 75 divided by 5 is actually 15. So there's 15 popsicles sold, and 5 popsicles eaten. Okay? Now we know what our numbers mean. We know we have our numbers, and we can put them in the proper place. So the next step was to take these two numbers and subtract them from 25. The next part in the question says how many popsicles were not sold. Okay, so we're focusing on one Saturday. Remember, she sold 25 popsicles each Saturday. It says if each Saturday her family eats 1/5 of 25 popsicles made, so that means that she made only 25 to sell each Saturday. So now we're looking at not sold or eaten. All right, so not sold or eaten, that means we take the total amount, 25, and we subtract the amount that were sold, which is 15, and the amount that were eaten, which is 5. 25 minus 15, that is 10. And we subtract now 10 minus 5, and that is going to give us 5. So there were 5 popsicles left over, not sold or eaten, for one Saturday. Okay, don't forget, that was just one Saturday. 5 left over from one Saturday. Now we need to focus on our last step. So this was how many were not sold or eaten. Now let's look at our last step, all summer. All summer, okay? So all summer, how many days did she sell? How many Saturdays did she sell popsicles? She sold for 8, right? She sold for 8 Saturdays. Alicia sold popsicles for 8 Saturdays. And she had 5 left over each Saturday, okay? So each, what kind of word is each? Each is a multiplication word as well. So let's clear some space. So she had 5 popsicles left over, and she had sold for 8 Saturdays, and she had 5 popsicles left over each Saturday. That means we're going to do 5 times 8. And what's 5 times 8? That is, let me give you a chance to think about it. 5 times 8 is 40. 40 popsicles not sold or eaten. Awesome. So we labeled our numbers. We're going to double check the question, make sure we answered it. So the question says, Alicia is selling popsicles for 8 Saturdays this summer. If each Saturday her family eats 1/5 of the 25 popsicles made, and she sells 3/5 of the 25 popsicles made, how many popsicles were not sold or eaten all summer? So we found out how many were not sold, how many were sold, how many were eaten based on the fractions. Then we subtracted those numbers from the total amount, 25, and we ended up with 5 popsicles not sold or eaten for one Saturday. And then we multiplied one Saturday's worth of not eaten popsicles or sold popsicles, which is 5, and multiply that by 8 Saturdays. And 5 times 8 is 40 popsicles not sold or eaten. Now what we're going to do is last, which is box our answer. So it stands out, and you're done. Yay! So there's almost always more than one way to solve a math problem. So let's look at strategy number 2 for solving Alicia's situation. We're going to first add together the fractions of eaten and sold popsicles for one Saturday. Number 2 is we're going to subtract the total fraction of eaten and sold from the whole fraction. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. This will give us the fraction of the leftovers for one Saturday. Then we're going to multiply the fraction of the leftovers by the total amount, which is 25, total amount of popsicles. And this will give us the actual number of leftovers, so the number instead of just the fraction. And last is we're going to multiply the number of leftovers from one Saturday by 8 Saturdays, okay? So the first step is to add fractions. And which 2 fractions are we adding? We're going to be adding 1/5 plus 3/5. Why? Because these are taken. These are popsicles or fractions of popsicles that are either being eaten or being sold. So it's going to look like this: 1/5 plus 3/5. But let me show you a diagram of what this looks like. So this is a diagram of dots, and these dots represent popsicles, and they represent 25 popsicles. If you see, there are 5 dots going across the top and 5 dots going down, meaning that 5 times 5 is 25, okay? So when we're adding these fractions, 1/5 plus 3/5, the 5 in the denominator means that we're breaking down this 25 into 5 pieces, okay? And the number in the numerator means that we're going to be selecting that amount in the numerator. So 1/5 means that we broke down the 25 into 5 pieces, and that would be easy because there are 5 rows. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the 5 pieces. And then 1/5 means that we are selecting one of those pieces, okay? So let's take a color, and I'm going to circle this as one of those pieces. 1/5, okay? 1 out of the 5. Now, if we look at 3/5, we're going to be looking at the same amount because this whole thing is broken down into 5 pieces, and only one of those is 1/5, but 3 of these rows is going to be 3/5. Okay, so we're adding 1/5 plus 3/5 out of the same amount or the same whole of popsicles, the 25. All right, so how many rows do you see that are circled? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 out of the 5 are circled. That would give us 4/5. Now let's do it mathematically. 1/5 plus 3/5. The denominator always stays the same, and we only add the numerator. So 5 stays down the bottom, and the numerators will be 1 plus 3. Okay, what's 1 plus 3? 4. So 4/5 is the amount of popsicles that were taken. Remember, 1/5 represents the amount that were eaten by Alicia's family, and then 3/5 is the amount that she sold, or the fraction of the whole that she sold. And 4/5 represents the total amount that was basically taken, or something was done with them. So the next thing we're going to do is subtract the fraction that was used from the fraction of the whole. Okay, now we're going to use the same diagram to try to identify what the whole is. So remember, we have 25 altogether. We broke them down into rows of 5. And what's the amount that was used? The amount that was used was 4/5, remember? So that's 4 rows out of the 5, 4/5. But if we want all of the rows, that would mean that we would circle 5 out of the 5, right? So 5/5 is the total amount. 5/5 will represent the 25 popsicles. So we're subtracting 4/5 from 5/5, okay? And if you can see from the diagram, you can probably tell what we're going to get. 4/5 minus 5/5 will leave us with what? 1/5. 1/5 is left over. Now let's do the math. So remember, we subtract from the numerator only and leave the denominator the same. 5 minus 4, that's going to give us 1, which matches our diagram. So 1/5 is the fraction of the amount left over, not eaten and not sold, okay? So our third step is to find 1/5 of 25, okay? Now, let's try to look at the diagram to get that answer as well. 1/5, so remember, all of these dots amount to 25 popsicles, and we broke them down into rows of 5, and each row has 5 in them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if we want one of those 5 rows, we can look at this one and count how many are in that row. Like we said, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 popsicles that represent 1 out of the 5 rows or sections of the 25, okay? So 5 popsicles, and we're going to do the math to see if that matches. So like I said before, 1/5 of 25 means we're going to use multiplication. It's going to be 1/5 times 25, okay? And 1/5 times 25 would turn into 1/5 times 25 over 1, because we want to multiply fraction by a fraction. And when we do that, we multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So 1 times 25 and 5 times 1, and that's going to give us 25 over 5, and 25 divided by 5 gives us 5. So once again, we have our math matching our diagram. Now the last step is to multiply leftovers from one Saturday by leftovers from all the Saturdays, which is 8, right? So leftovers from one Saturday is 5, and we want to multiply that by the 8. So that's 5 times 8, and 5 times 8 is 40 popsicles. That were not eaten and not sold. All right, so this is exactly the same as what we got last time for our first strategy, and that's pretty cool, right? We circle our answer and we're done. So this goes to show you that there are many, many different ways to do one problem. You just have to find what works for you and do it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are a little less nervous to work with fractions. Please let me know in the card right in the corner which strategy you like the best, either strategy 1 or strategy 2. And also you can let me know in the comments any questions that you have or any requests that you would like me to make a math problem on for the future, for any future Word Problem Wednesday. I would also love for you to join the KOG Math Success Library, where you can find an abundance of resources and tutorials to help you along your math journey, including word problems. And if you would like to see any of my older videos, you can either watch them by clicking one of them on the screen or in the description. See you next Wednesday.